With us here now is Bryant Thomas, a longtime AP newsman out of Washington. Bryant, prior to election night, you were telling me that you had some deep fears and misgivings about what a President Trump and the Republicans would do with social programs, especially Social Security. What are those concerns?
Well, I think what's important is that President-elect Trump has promised that he would not monkey with Social Security, that it would be there for those who need it when they retire. Republicans on the Hill have made no such promise. In fact, just the opposite. They've tried to privatize it. They've tried to cut benefits. They've tried to increase the retirement age. And some of that has been with some success. So it's going to be an interesting dichotomy here to see who prevails in the debate over Social Security and other social spending.
Well, you've been telling me that the Republicans have been gunning for this for a long time to dismantle Social Security, privatize it at the very least, and otherwise gum up the works that we're used to. But again, Trump has supported it. So considering that he's got Democrats and Republicans to deal with, although the Republicans are going to control all three branches of government, how do you think it'll play out? I mean, is this a real threat to be concerned about?
I think it is. And even though Trump may say he wants to keep Social Security the way it is, there may be an element of horse trading for some of the other things that he wants to do, such as stop supporting climate change or building the wall or some of the other promises that were made during the campaign. If there's an effort to keep Social Security where it is and functioning the way it is, it might take something else from Congress to bring that about, so that Trump may give in on not monkeying with Social Security if it means getting the wall, having Congress reject the TPP, anything that is on the table right now that Trump may want more in the short term than shoring up Social Security.
But what about the long-standing presumption that it is such a hot topic, a third rail of American politics, that there are so many people affected by it that they would never be able to dismantle it? There'd be a public uprising. What about that argument?
Well, I think to a point that's true. But as we get farther and farther into the retirement of the baby boomers, which is, of course, the big part of that third rail, because they were the ones who benefited most from it, only because it was only 10 years in its existence when the first baby boomers were born. So those are the people who really benefit today from Social Security. So if you take that to its logical conclusion, that some of the people who are getting Social Security benefits today and live exclusively off those benefits, or off small pensions, that might be, coincidental with Social Security, that some of these things may indeed provide an opportunity to monkey with Social Security as the baby boomers start dying off. And they've successfully, and I say they because it's the they in parenthesis, have successfully argued that Social Security is not going to be there for the next generation of people to retire if we don't do something to fix it now.
So what you're saying is they've already conditioned the younger generation to accept their presumption that it won't be there, or at least their argument that it won't be there. So therefore, it might be easier to monkey with.
Absolutely. And my two children who are in their 40s already tell me that they don't expect Social Security to be there when they retire, or that they are going to rely on it in their retirement for a steady stream of income.
And why should they be disabused of that notion?
Well, I think it's the steady drumbeat of stuff from the right wing that they've always had in terms of trying to beat up on Social Security based upon the employer match.
What I'm saying, though, Brian, is that actuarially, you're saying that the argument doesn't hold up, that it will be there in its present form, and that the Republican establishment has long been giving false information, which is having an effect on the younger generation, believing that misleading information.
Oh, absolutely. You know, you say it often enough and long enough, people believe it. Goebbels proved that in World War II. So I think that, you know, if you tell younger people that the only way that they can have a secure future is to provide for it themselves with their own 401ks and with investments in Wall Street and things like that, then eventually they begin to believe that. And that's not necessarily the case.
And
Social
what about the
Security,
argument that they've offered now for a while that it should be privatized and therefore everyone would get a better return through Wall Street investment than the government could give them?
if you go back to 2007 and 2008, yes, people who lost a lot of money in their 401ks at that time because of the Great Recession indeed made most of that money back, in fact, more. But think of where they would have been had we not lost it to begin with. If you had $100,000 and you built from $100,000 on, or you built from the $50,000 after the Great Recession, look at all the ground you have to make up. So to say that you recovered is one thing. To say that the compounding that you lost is still there is crazy. It's not there. It's gone.
Who would make the most benefit out of privatization?
Oh, nobody except those on Wall Street, the big investment houses, and those who make a living on what we do with our 401k plans now. The mechanisms are all in place there to do this. The only question is whether you're going to take a large amount of money, and this is huge, to use someone's favorite word, a huge amount of money that will be an influx into Wall Street. And my concern is the last thing we need to do is give them another grab bag full of money.
So you expect a serious and powerful assault on Social Security, at least from the Republican establishment, even if the new president doesn't go along with it.
I think you're right. I think we've already seen some of that. They've tried several times to privatize and to cut back on benefits. They refused to adjust the COLA, even in times where we had 2 years in a row where there was no adjustment at all. So there is this inbred disdain, if not hate, for Social Security from the far right, and that goes back to its passage because of the employer match. This is not hard to figure out.
And the employer match is the key element here.
Absolutely, and that gets very little discussion. For every dollar that you put into Social Security, your employer must match. So if you have $100 taken out of your paycheck for Social Security, your employer has to put in $100. And that, in fact, has been the big rub since the beginning. It's what drives the underground economy, where people are paid part in cash and part on the books, so that the employers don't have to pay the full match.
And what about the Republican argument that the employer match actually suppresses hiring and expansion?
Well, it's been around for 85 years, and if they are not smart enough to put a business model together that can function in that environment, then they don't deserve to be in business. Other employers have managed to do just fine in all of this throughout the years. So I would say that's a specious argument.
Okay, before we wrap this up now, once again, you feel that despite a President Trump's support for Social Security, in horse trading to get some of his other programs passed, he may actually throw this to the Republicans as a bone and allow them to alter Social Security as we know it?
Well, I think he may have no choice if he wants something else from them. You know how that works in Washington. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but you've got to give me something that's scratchable. And I think that's the whole thing right there. It all depends on what's on the table. If indeed there is something that Trump desperately wants from Congress, and they know he desperately wants it, that may be the big bargaining chip that is needed to put Social Security in the crosshairs.
How do you think FDR would be reacting to a President Trump and the Republicans in terms of Social Security?
Well, I think he's already rolled over in his grave on the privatization factor. This would really, I'm sure, It might even bring them up. I mean, it's really, I mean, got to be shocking to anybody who's old enough to remember the New Deal and what it meant to retirees in this country in terms of their financial stability and long-term survivability after retirement.
Well, he had a rough time himself getting it passed. Called a traitor to his class, called a communist, destructive of the American economic system, et cetera, et cetera. Yet he got it passed.
He still got it passed, and it's still around, and it's still functioning. It's not a Ponzi system. Everybody knows that. That's another favorite phrase they use to describe it. It's not a Ponzi system. It's been around for 85 years. Ponzi systems don't provide benefits to people on a monthly basis. That's all you got to know.
So you expect something to occur with this fairly soon into a new administration?
Well, they're already starting on repealing Obamacare and the Affordable Act, even though they're probably going to have to do piecemeal peel-offs of what is on there, because to do it all en masse would really cause convulsions. But that doesn't mean they're not going to try. And I would say that if they're going to wheel up Obamacare even before the inauguration, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Social Security bill pop up too.
All right. So let's stay tuned. Bryant Thomas, AP Newsman, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.